talking to you about today, because why is that consistent support so critical and so important, and what it actually takes to support any cause that you're going to be looking into, any cause that you want to actually make a difference with. Right? Could you go next? So this is a story that's so common, which does happen with a lot of children. The next thing is it does affect 35 million children in India, right? And either they're under like multiple different ranges of issues, which is they're living in streets, they're abused, they are orphaned, they might have a parent who's not able to take care of them, or they're into some kind of like civil unrest and hence they've been displaced from their particular houses, right? So in this particular case, the adult outcomes of these children are very poor, and I want to talk a little bit about it because we say India is a very young country and that a lot of the next generation is going to be all of these children, and that's 35 million, that's the reality, right? And the adult outcomes of these children are often this, which is 55% have no employable skills, 60% earn less than 15,000, so imagine they're at no place to be able to support a family of their own. 62% live in slums. And for the interviews we started conducting with people between the age of 25 to 35, we realized that 1 in every 3 person we interviewed was either reported missing weeks after the interview or was reported dead, right? So that's literally where this is headed towards. Next. So what exists, and it seems to be a big enough problem. I think, are there any childcare NGOs over here today? Anybody working towards childcare today? Yes, there are. Okay. So there are enough and more, like anytime I meet people, there are a lot of people working towards education, there are a lot of people working towards childcare, there is enough and more solutions that kind of exist, right? So we didn't want to start off and work towards creating a whole new solution. The first thing we did was to understand what already exists, and we realized that the government solution to children in need of care and protection, that 35 million, is to put them into a shelter home environment, right? Which is often, while they do get basic food, clothing, shelter, it's very understaffed and they're not able to get the other components of education, and you see those outcomes as they end up turning up, right? So our solution was to decide to bridge the gaps, and the gaps that we bridged is this. Overall, we started working, we had a 3-pronged approach. The first one was to start working directly with the child and to empower them, and we work on an age transitional model, which is start with every age group, because when you run a volunteering activity, you know what it takes to grow a child. You need to be able to parent a child properly, right? But the point is that you won't be able to do that with volunteers, because 24/7 you're not going to be able to be around that particular child. So we started having a focused and targeted approach, and for every age group we asked ourselves, what are the skills required to support the child? And the youngest age group started with self-confidence, self-motivation, all your inner life skills, which moved on to an academic support, which moved on to a transition support to help them transition in the age of 18 outside a shelter home environment, all the way to a one-on-one mentoring support after the age of 21 till the age of 29. So they actually end up having a stable family outcome, stable kind of housing, and everything that's required to take it forward. So that's our model. I would be more than willing to discuss that in detail if anybody wants to know about it. Next. And the second and the most important part, and this is what I'm going to focus the rest of my talk on, right, which is improving the ecosystem around the child. Because they say it takes a village to raise a child, and it is that. It's not going to be one person or 2 people who can make a difference in the life of a child, but it is about changing everybody and every single player, right from the schools, the parents, the business leaders, who can give them jobs, and there are many of you sitting over here today. So it's about every single person coming in together and being able to make that particular difference, right? So what happened after we moved to this model? So the change that we saw is from 50% who were passing 10th standard earlier, we moved to a 96%. From 2% that ended up clearing with first class honors, it ended up being 46%, which meant that they could choose whichever field of study they could take forward, and that became a critical impact point. Next. And we saw 98% progress post a shelter home. Earlier, the dropout was 85% would drop out by 10th standard, and they would not progress in their academics or future. Next. So these were all the different areas where they progressed. It's just an interesting data point, right? Move forward. And could you go one slide back, actually? One side back. Okay, next. Okay, move to the next one. Cool. So we are at 23 cities and 67 shelters right now, and that's the current scale that we operate at. I just wanted to, before I get into the how, talk a little bit about the story of what happened with those two youths, right? And I ended it with one of them ended up in substance abuse, alcoholism, and all of those components. But then, when we started working towards the new model of community, what we did was we got the youth back from Bangalore, put them in Chennai at the same house where the rest of the youth were staying, and eventually we realized that she was able to progress a lot better only because when they left the shelter, they did not have a support system at all, right? The second they came back and they were with their friends, they at least had some motivation to move forward in their life, right? Which brings Matt to our volunteering model is not that of the traditional volunteering model where we work with a volunteer goes directly and tries and supports a child and it's a 1:1 impact, but we move to a community model of volunteering, and which means that we're trying to get a whole community to come together to work on the problems supporting or staying with children within the vicinity of that particular community, right? So that's basically the model that we follow, and it also enables multiple caregivers for one particular child, where there's also a single caregiver who's giving a particular intervention to a child. Right? Let's move, right? For the very reason that the community has all the resources required to solve the problem, so our model is an 8-pronged approach. We have 8 places where we support our volunteers with, and I'm going to take you through these spaces, what happens at each stage of a volunteer's journey, and these are your volunteer journey stages, right? The framework is that of mobilizing young leaders. Again, we have the model works as we recruit them, we inspire them, we collectivize them, we train and develop, we empower, we challenge, we mentor, and we support them. So I'll start with the recruitment. So the 8 things that I showed you there, we work with it across our entire stages of our volunteer journey, right? The first one is the recruitment stage, which is you get to recruit volunteers. So earlier when we started off, we had around 20,000 sign-ups for every city in Make a Difference, right? And they would be from anywhere in the city. What ended up happening is if urgently a child required support, it makes it a lot harder for a volunteer to come all the way from a different part of the city to come in and support the child. But imagine, for every 200 children living in a shelter home, you have 20,000 people in that community living around them, right? What if we started recruiting them to become volunteers? It's not about the skills, it's not about the capability, but we said, if we can really get into a community model of volunteering and empower them and train them, then couldn't we really make a difference? And couldn't every community then be super self-sufficient instead of us trying to work on a problem individually by just those who are passionate who are sitting miles away, right? So our first model was to recruit from within the community and to inspire them in the recruitment where we talk about community change, right? And we don't make it about Make a Difference, we don't make it about children only because what if they could take that model forward? What if they could volunteer for other organizations which they could give better time to? And what if they could just change the community around them? So that's our first model where we recruit, we inspire, and we empower them with a framework so they can go and either make a difference at MAT or they can do it outside of Make a Difference, right? The next platform that we have is the induction. Yes. So in the induction platform, we introduce them to the community. By this community, I mean the Make a Difference community, right? Where they get to know that you're not the single caregiver. We have a 1:4 ratio of volunteer and child and a 1:1 of a volunteer to youth that is about the age of 16, but we also have each other supporting each other. So we have options where if a volunteer is not available that week, can somebody else from within that entire community come and still support the child, because the primary caregiver, the primary consistent support is required for children to be able to get whatever they have to do. Right. Next, you have to go one back. Are the slides missing? Okay, cool. I think the images are not coming, no problem. I'll move forward with it. Go next. Okay, now I've lost track. Can you just go a little back? Yeah. Okay, so this is the induction one. Go next. Cool. The next model is that of the 0 hour, so which is after getting our volunteers, we recruit them, we induct them, and then we make sure that we're supporting them on a weekly basis to ensure that they get weekly mentoring, and this is literally to make them become change agents, right? And that's why. So the volunteering requirement we ask out of our volunteers is for 4 hours every week. 2 hours where they work directly with children, and 1 hour where we actually mentor them in becoming change agents of tomorrow, and talking about other social causes, building other skills, and all those components end up happening over here next. The next platform is that of collectivizing, where we end up having a city circle. That's what we call it. So these names are irrelevant as much as the platform and what we do. The city circle as such gets them all together and gets all the caregivers of the child in one platform, right? We get them to understand that while you are trying to make it this level of difference as a volunteer, and I think the biggest thing that we do struggle with, I know many of you might have also faced it, which is as volunteers, it's very hard to empathize on what already exists and what other people are also doing, right? Like especially if the child has a single parent, how are they going about supporting them, and how are they also playing a role in the life of a child, right? And that's primarily what we do in our collectivization platform, for them to understand the overall bigger picture and to take it forward, right? The platform after that is to activate the community, right? Which is, now we have made sure that within the Make a Difference community, that is our 5,000 strong volunteer community, they understand the problem. What about the people living around the shelter? What about the parents of all of these volunteers? What about their relatives? Can they start understanding the problem? That's like the next step that we basically take, right? We empower them to start taking ownership of the community, and we start challenging them to go and activate the community on any kind of social issues, whichever they're excited about. Get your communities to start volunteering, right? Moving forward, we have our community fundraising, which is the next event, which is where again we continue to challenge them, but this time, instead of just activating them, we challenge them to care. Because the second funding comes in, like if your relatives are paying for something, they will want to know more about the problem. They will want to be involved in this particular problem, right? So that's basically what our community fundraising is. The next one is our dream camps. So I started off with the recruitment where we inspire them, we collectivize them about the problem. We end with our dream camps, which is a 3-day camp activity where we take our volunteers out to, and children out to a 3-day residential camp. In this time, they truly get to understand what their future opportunities look like, right? And working with children, the biggest problem is you can't inspire them on the longer term vision. They need to actually experience a great life to know that they want to have that kind of great life, right? So that's basically what our dream camp does. And this is also where the rest of the community, our CSR funders, and everybody also gets involved, and they also get to be a part of the change, and they get to see what that change looks like, right? And the last one, can move next, is retention. And in retention, we look at it as a challenge that we leave all our volunteers with. That is, continue to give consistent support to all the children and make a difference for the upcoming years and see through the entire child's journey for 5 years, 10 years, or continue to join the social space and other organizations and make a difference in the lives of any other cause that you're excited about. But now you have a solution, you have a model, and go about taking that forward, right? That's about it from my end. You can move in to the last slide, which is we fundamentally believe in building communities that care. That is our mission, and that's what we want to do, and that's how we go about solving our problem, and that's our volunteering model also. Thank you. Any questions?
Sorry, I hate to be the villain, and I'm just like hovering around with every passing minute, just coming closer to the stage, and she was getting a little conscious. But I think they've done a lot of excellent work around all the 8 stages. Also retention, I think, is something that we can touch upon in the Q&A phase of the conversation. Without wasting any further time, I will introduce you to the next speaker. He was kind enough to give me a bio and asked me to introduce you in a cool way. Thank you so much. His bio says that he is someone who works with a disconnected audience and builds a connect with them. My first instinct was Mukesh Ambani. But he's not Mukesh Ambani, he's a better... Sorry, that joke wasn't prepared. We have Gautam from Benefit, who does exactly this, which is working with a disconnected audience and building a connect for them with the civic and social issues around them. The area of focus of his conversation today is going to be around how do you build a buy-in, like the what, how, and why of building a buy-in for volunteers that you work with towards the issues that you care about, and how do you kind of make them care about those issues. Gautam also works with an organization called Benefit, and a lot of his experiences and journey that he's going to talk about is working with Rebel.
Hi, good morning. How's the Josh? I like that, sir. How's the Josh?
Hi, sir.
Hi. Where? How's the Josh?
Hi, sir.
Okay. This conversation will be slightly different. It might make you think. If you do not understand what I'm saying, you can stop me, but actually don't stop me. We will finish it after 13 minutes. Next slide, please. What is being covered? A lot of high-level stuff. But I want to understand what is volunteering. How do you get disconnected people to want to be volunteers? How do you get them to buy in? And what are the stages we see as a journey in their journey? Next slide. When not getting into details, feel free to reach out afterwards so we can go into details. Next slide. Okay. I need some of your responses. Who or what is a volunteer? Two people's responses, please. Yes, sir. Quickly. Time's over.
Again, question.
What or who is a volunteer?
Volunteer who helps so many people, orphans and disabled or mentally handicapped or anything, to develop their. For example, I am extending my service to the orphan students. So, by admitting them to inculcate discipline, to provide lodging, boarding, bus pass package, etc. for the continuation of studies, proper accommodation, medication, till they reaches their goals.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So anyone who volunteers to do something is a volunteer. Anything.
Fair enough. Thank you. Sorry. Next slide. Where all have you volunteered? Please bear with me. Don't treat me as it. There's something coming. Where all have you volunteered? Can two people raise your hands? Any two people? Yes, ma'am. Where all have you volunteered?
So one of it was to visit a home for orphan children
Okay.
and spend time with them with a specific agenda in mind. But beyond that, I think it's also spending your own time as a pro bono volunteer to offer a skill-based service to the NGO itself.
Fantastic. Thank you. Where else have you volunteered? Yes, ma'am. Sorry, will you?
So I volunteered with myself first because I was mentally ill for a past 6 months. I spent time with myself, I volunteered myself, which boosted me to volunteer for others.
Thank you. That takes a lot of courage to say it. Respect. Thank you so much. No, previous slide. Previous slide. How many of you volunteered at your own home? You saw your mother cleaning something, you said, "Chalo, I'll help." How many of you volunteered at your friend's place? You're also volunteers, right? So fundamentally, question is, when we look at volunteering, what is the intent of volunteering? Who creates the opportunity for volunteering? And what gives you the joy? Is it a task? Or is it the impact we see when we see whoever we are doing it for happening? So the fundamental question, next slide, is volunteering an instance or is it a trait which is there inside all of us and we just don't know how to leverage it? We call it the difference between expathy and expathy. In the case of a trait, it becomes empathy. If your mother is washing too many vessels, you'll say, "Chalo, I'll help." If your wife is doing it, it's a different matter. If you don't help, you'll die. But you will go out and help, that's also empathy. But in the case of instance-based volunteering, you go to clean up, the chance of it being sympathy, "Hey, I can help out, let me help out," sympathy becomes higher. So therefore, we feel there's a disconnect. Next slide. Do you think, or at least in our case, we thought doesn't make sense to make it a trait, and that's what we have done at Rebenefit. Next slide. At Rebenefit, our vision is that every young person or every young citizen is a local problem solver. We use a 4-step process called discover, investigate, solve, and share. You can use it, you can call it anything. But typically what happens in the first step, can you all look at, there's a cup with something on all of your tables, can you look at, yeah? What's there? Cup dark, there's no candy there. Saucer, so sorry. Sugar? Okay. Does it look neat? Are you happy with the way it looks? How many of you say yes, it looks beautiful? Please raise your hand. How many of you say it's not, does not belong here, let's get rid of it? Please raise your hand. Okay, at least 1%, 2 people raise their hands. 3, thank you. Yeah, why is it there? You have discovered a problem. Fantastic. Now, how do we investigate as to why it is here? We usually ask a few questions. Who is it affecting? How is it affecting that person? And how do they want this problem solved? When you do that, you basically humanize the problem. When somebody who is so used to seeing a problem discovers it, 2 things happen. If they are disconnected from it, they've seen it every day. If you go to a, how many of you been to a stinking toilet? If you go to it every day, after some time, stop being a problem. A part problem. Go and do what you're doing, go. Or if you're going to the first step, oh my God, social media, tak, 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 tak. 2 types of people. Discovery helps both of them realize that there's a problem. That's the first step. Second step, when you ask who's getting affected, it makes it human. You feel like doing something about it. Then you go ahead and you solve it and you share so that other people also know that there's some change happening. We all need inspiration. 4-step process. Next step. Every person typically goes on a 4-stage journey. This is the journey part of what we're talking about. In this, please look at it from 2 terms or 2 perspectives. What is the effort for somebody creating the volunteering experience? And what are the traits of the person who is the volunteer? Right? The large chunk of people we work with are usually passive. Oh, global warming is happening. Oh, there's a problem. As a person who's creating the experience, the effort you have to put in is you have to create a, like we were told by Karthi, you have to create an aha. Let them discover the problem. Then they start owning it. Let them investigate why the problem is happening. They are more curious, they want to know more. And now there's a chance that they want to solve it. So when you give them one complete ability to solve a problem in just one instance, you move them from passive to being aware. By the time you know, oh, I can make a difference. Subtle plug-in, I can make a difference. Right? And you really start believing in yourself. Most of us have been told you can't do anything. Or we were told today, no? Become very skeptical. What difference can 1% do? Unless you are Mukesh Ambani, not much. So, when you move into an aware state, now they are curious. But also there's this doubt, is this really happening or is it a dream? Are you sure? Give them 3 or 4 more abilities to solve a problem. Suddenly they are very active. Because they believe in it, they believe in themselves. And they believe that they are doing what they think is necessary. Give them insights, give them data, help them meet great mentors, expose them to more opportunities. They are ready to become leaders in their own communities because they know what's thinking. So just write a question now, only because of time.
Just between these 2 slides,
Yes.
this one and the previous one,
Yeah.
this looks like a direct connect. Do you actually have a direct connect? Because it's posted.
Perfect. Okay, now let's look at the traits. Passive, I don't know what's happening. When you are aware, oh my God, I can make a difference. But is this really true? When it comes to active, I know I can make a difference. But I'm doing it because I believe in it. When you're a civic leader, oh my God, I'm seeing something that other people might not be seeing. But there's a need to do it. Have you ever felt that urgency? That usually comes out when you feel you're a civic leader. Next slide, I'll answer what you said. We call this a very simple thing. There's a difference between doing it with you and a difference between doing it for yourself. 2 slides back. 2 slides back. Fantastic. When you're doing it with somebody, you're walking them from passive to aware and being with them when they're moving the transition from aware to active. Right? What do you need? You need a mentor, somebody to say, hey, here's an opportunity, do it. You also need certain tools, we call it the toolkit, to make that experience easy. But the minute they become active, they're doing it for themselves, DIY, and then they take charge. So I'll get into greater details, 2 slides ahead. First thing, for anything to happen, the root cause we have seen is that our buy-in is the weakest. Why should you do it? More often than not, somebody comes and tells us what to do and therefore we do it. So we as the organizers or the creators of this experience need to be very clear what do we want. Do you want to give them that one instance and make an aha and close it there? Or do we want a journey? Second thing is, how do you make something as simple as just clearing this saucer with sugar a powerful experience. We'll try that as an exercise if we have time. Third thing, please note, this is a lot of painful learning. We didn't want to be leaders. In many cases, I know a lot of people who are leading organizations who don't want to be leaders, who want other people to take charge. But the reality is, until the people you're working with are ready to take charge, you have to be the leader. So it's a journey. Please be patient. Don't lose. Last thing, mom. Why do you need a mom in every journey? Once she takes responsibility, she'll give you love, solutions. How many of you have been through festivals with your parents? There's a lot to learn from your mother. When she needs to be strict, she's strict. When she needs you to get things done, she'll yell at you. But after everything, one extra sweet will come saying, don't worry, it's okay. Right? That's the power of mom. She'll abuse you when you're like, when you're by yourself, you're not good enough, but you're in front of everybody, you're wonderful. And she knows how to appreciate that. Every community needs a mother. In our volunteering journey, we need that mother figure. And that the leader needs to be. Next slide. We also need a certain set of things to make the whole experience, the journey easy. Solutions to solve a problem easily. Community to make you feel you're with somebody. How many of you have had bad math scores in your life at least once? Did you cry alone or did your friends come and say it's okay, don't worry? How many of you have had friends coming and saying it's okay? How many of you have had love failures? Did you go through it alone or did a friend come and say it's okay? Huh? Typically as a community, if you went through it alone, I'm so sorry. But yeah, you also need knowledge, which is two things. Data to indicate the size of the problem and insights how to solve it. And last thing, tech. As I said, just to enable. Tech is not the solution. Tech will do nothing unless you use it. So tech is just enabling. Next slide. This is something we always tend to forget. And we are almost at Q&A time. Remember, you need to do it with people, otherwise it's not possible. Next slide. I think I wanted to kind of ask you guys, if you have to reflect, what will you take away as a creator of the journey and two as the volunteer? Next slide. We'll pause here. Just go to the next slide. This is something we can offer, a set of questions to make you reflect, either as the experienced creator or as a volunteer. To go through the discovery, investigate, solve, share, and the why, how, what of each stage. Over to you guys for questions. Most questions she will answer. I think she can't answer, we'll figure out who.
Does anyone have any questions?
The first question I already asked you.
Fantastic.
So that's to you, and not to
It's to
her.
you.
Would you want to venture a guess? What do you think is the connect?
So there were those 4 stages, and there were these 4 stages. The first 4 stages were discovery of yourself. The second 4 stages were actually the civic ladder. So you're combining the civic discovery with the civic thing. Right?
The reality is that there's these 4 steps go in parallel. If you talk to Venkat, he'll give you a concept called the flow, being in the flow. At every step, you are. I'm sure timing was right. 15 minutes got over. But we'll discover the problem later. We realized that it's actually a circle. It's not a 4-step process. You cover 4 steps, you're at the first floor, good job. Now you have to go to the second floor, you restart again. And it's interesting, right? Let's say you move from a passive person to an active person. You again have to rediscover yourself. You again have to investigate, why am I doing this? You have to solve your own challenges. And you have to then share it. Then you become an engaged or an active person. Again you have to go through it. You become a civic leader.
So the first 4 steps are actually repeated everywhere.
And the same thing with the problem, right? In front of you is a saucer, you have discovered one problem. You investigate to solve it, you close it. You realize there's another problem. Most of the things we are doing are wicket problems. You know the concept of wicket, right? There are so many interconnects. You can't just solve it in one instance. You pull waste, in waste there are so many sub-problems. So, next question is, fantastic question, thank you.
Anyone else?
let's try, since you have no questions, would you guys want to try an activity here?
Yes.
Okay, in your table is that saucer with some sugar.
Somebody ate the sugar in us.
Shabash, we have a new problem now. We'll figure that out. When we want some sugar, we'll put some sugar there. Okay, do not eat the sugar. It's not for consumption at this point. What I need you guys to do is, as a table, imagine you have to just make this simple task of removing the saucer with the sugar from here and solving that as a problem. How will you make people buy into doing this? One way is I come and say, okay, chalo, get rid of this now. But let's say you want to make people really want to keep that table clean. Let's say you want them to feel that this is completely not acceptable and we will make sure it never happens again. How will you do it? How will you humanize it? I'll give you guys 1 minute, very quickly brainstorm. Okay, and then we'll see what comes out of this. Half a minute done. Okay, stop. Anybody who's talking now will be disqualified. Okay, let's see how we're going to humanize this problem, right? What is a parallel? We all work in companies, or we might have gone to schools where we see tables being dirty all the time. Forget it, we go to cafe tables are always dirty. How do we solve that as a problem? That's a simple ask. Let's start with that table. Can you quickly tell us how you're going to solve the problem? Anyone with the mic? Okay, so here we have somebody who's going to lead by example. I clean, others will follow. Thank you. Who's making this? How will you solve it? Oh, thank you for your honesty.
So we didn't even think this is a problem. So we didn't want to solve it.
Thank you so much.
The first thing is, what is the purpose of having it there? If there is no purpose, then you can remove it by saying that.
Fantastic. This is a beautiful experience. Thank you so much. And this is typically how it works. So sorry.
I have a question.
Go on, sir.
Before we can think of why it is dirty.
Go on. First, think why it is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And after that we can start thinking something creative rather than going for a long solution. It can work within seconds.
Okay. So what is it? This is again very, very beautiful. When it is not my fault, whose fault is it? So, when we work with youth, whose fault is any sort of civic problem? Sarkar. It's not my fault. Sarkar. I will have done just this. It's not my fault I threw waste. Whose fault is it? They didn't come and clean this up, no? Whose job is it? We are paying taxes, correct? They have to come and clean this up, correct? But they're not doing their job. Why are you blaming me? What we realize is when you humanize it, it suddenly changes. Let me give you a demo. Can you just come? You guys, at any time, if you do not see why I am doing this, raise your hand. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Mr. Dhamraj. in double acting today. He's playing the role of the person whose job it is to clean this up every day.
Yeah.
Okay? Sir, please sit, sir. One go, sir. Okay. Is there another mic? Somewhere there was a mic, no? Mic. Anna.
Yeah, Anaka.
Sir, how often does this happen?
Sir, every day, sir, people just come for conference, eat and throw, sir.
Nobody.
And then hotel review giving bad, sir, saying not clean.
How often do they come and laugh at you like this, sir?
Sir, never, sir.
Oh,
Never
yeah.
face. Yeah. They keep saying things like clean this, clean that, and just go, sir. My
How do you-
boss yelled at me, sir.
How do you feel about it? Is it?
Very bad, sir. I tell them, Swachh Bharat, please clean, please clean. Nobody cleans, sir. I only have to do it, sir.
So, how often do you end up cleaning this every day?
After every session, we have to go and check if it's clean, and if not clean, then we clean it, sir.
So, what do you do with all the kachra?
We throw it in the dustbin.
Where?
Right behind this. There's a common dustbin. We
Huh.
throw it there. Used, unused, sir. All we throw it there.
Does it feel nice to throw it?
No, sir.
So, how does it smell?
Sweet, sir.
Sorry, one minute. There's a fundamental problem with the road. But we tried this out yesterday at Chai Kings. We went as 4 people. We ate samosa, we left it there. Then we tried to ask the people who were there, saying, Chalo, how do you think the person who cleans this feels? Suddenly something as simple as a table became a need to volunteer. People said, this is not right, you are right, we don't do this at our home, we'll change it. All I'm trying to demonstrate is when we get a pie, then people are willing to go on. I think the effectively totally session is over. Thank you very much. Seriously, it's over.